What if there was a safe space for you to explore artificial intelligence? What if there was a team of friendly professionals waiting to help you examine what you can do with AI in your courses? Welcome to the world of what if.
Hello everybody, my name is Regina Kudryavtseva. I'm a multimedia producer here at the Center for Online and Continuing Education. And today I'm going to be talking about teaching AI to design. And as you can see, there's an asterisk at the end of design. And I want you to keep in mind as I'm going through this presentation because it will be important later. But today, I am mainly going to be talking about how to make better color choices and create accessible course visuals. And when I'm talking about course visuals, I'm talking about presentations, any type of graphics that you're including for the students, any images that they're seeing in the course. So before we get started, let's quickly look at the agenda and what we're going to be discussing today. So first, we will start off talking about some common problems with colors and visuals, kind of discuss the theory behind of what can be possibly wrong with the course visuals. Then we'll go into the web content accessibility guidelines and discuss some core design rules to improve course visuals. And in the first and second part, we're mainly going to be talking about the theory, the factual information behind color design. And by knowing this information, we can then use it for AI implementation, where I will go into part 3, where I will discuss how we can implement it with AI tools and do a live demo. And today I'm going to be using Gemini, so if you want to open it up, there's a chance. And then after that, we're going to go into some key takeaways, and if anybody has any questions for me, feel free to ask them then. But to get started, let's talk about some common problems with colors and visuals. Whoa, this slide looks so crazy, right? There's just so much going on. Can anybody in the room or in the chat please tell me what you think might be wrong with it? Feel free to type it or to say it out loud. But I'll just quickly go through what I'm seeing as the main problems. First of all, oh my gosh, there's just so much going on. There's too many colors, there's patterns in the background, the text is incredibly hard to read, and everything is just so inconsistent. There's the orange color in the beginning, some numbers are missing, there is just an inconsistent color palette throughout. And then because you're seeing it like this, even though you saw my previous slide, you saw what the agenda is supposed to be, this is confusing. You're trying to understand why I'm showing you this and trying to read the text, but you can't because it is so low in contrast and so similar to the background colors that it's actually very difficult for you to tell what is going on. And this is applicable for your course visuals as well. If your students are seeing slides like this, and of course this is the most extreme example, like I doubt slides ever look this bad, but if they're seeing things where the contrast is low, it is hard to read, they're confused, they're not understanding what kind of information you're trying to present, this can lead to them missing important course materials. If they're so confused by what they're seeing on the screen, they're not paying attention to what they're actually supposed to be learning. So, since this is a big problem, what are some ways that we can fix it? And once again, I will talk about the problem in here as well, so you can see how it's all correlated. Like we talked about, there's too many colors, which leads to visual clutter, and there's low contrast, which makes the text very difficult to read. All of this, as you can see, it's interconnected. If there are too many colors, you're losing important information, you're leading to confusion, their stuff is inconsistent, there's low contrast, hard to read, and vice versa. It is all connected to each other. So, like I said, what are some ways that we can improve it? Well, first, let's talk about contrast. There are guidelines called Web Content Accessibility Guidelines that help you check the contrast ratio between your text color and your background color. And Florida Atlantic adheres to the 2.1 level AA guidelines to make sure that all the visuals in the course are accessible. So I am a visual learner personally, so I am going to go ahead and use a tool called Adobe Color to demonstrate what I mean by the contrast ratio. So here we have some colors. We have the text color, this orange, and then the background color, this blue. For the sake of this, I am going to go ahead and change it a little bit so then you can see different examples. Let's do this purple, and then let's do this green. So as you can see in the preview, the regular text is failing the contrast ratio. So is the large text, and so are the graphical components. Now, what can we do to combat that? What we can actually do is decrease the color of the background, make it darker. So as we keep going and making it darker and darker, you see it starts passing the contrast ratio. So now it's passing on the regular text, the large text, and the graphical components. Now, if we had it the other way around, let's say the background was lighter, this purple, and then the text color was this, if I go ahead and increase it back to this green, it becomes very difficult to read and understand. And you never know what kind of devices or what kind of person is taking your course. It is hard to tell, so you don't know what kind of issues they might have and what kind of problems they might be dealing with their devices. So it's always very, very good to make sure that it's accessible on all accounts. So back to the colors, we're seeing that the green is not passing, the green and purple is not passing any of the contrast ratios. So what we can do is we can actually decrease or make the color darker, and then, it starts passing it, and then it is much easier for you to read. You don't have to think about, what is going on. You can just clearly read the text, and the colors don't matter basically. You don't have to consider them when you're looking at something. Okay, so to go back to the presentation, now we can talk about some core design rules that we can use to create better color palettes. So as we just talked about, the contrast, making sure that your text stands out from the background, making sure that it's readable. It is very important to consider that. Next is simplicity. If we go back to the previous example that we had, which is crazy, it is not simple. There is a pattern in the background. There are too many colors, too many elements. They're not consistent. It's confusing. So to correct that, we make it simple. We limit the color palette that we have, and we use the colors that we choose with purpose. So instead of using 15 different colors to illustrate your points, you limit your color palette to 3 to 5 colors. Maybe 3 is the best. So you have the background color, the text color, and an accent color if you wanted to highlight anything for the student. And if you wanted to spice it up, you can add another accent color. But you limit the color palette to those few colors, and then it makes it simple, right? You don't have to, there's no crazy patterns. There's nothing that is drawing the student's attention to the pattern versus the material that you're trying to teach them. Next is consistency. You want to make sure that the same colors have the same meaning. So let's say if you're using a beige for your background throughout the presentation, like I am doing here, you already know that this is what it's going to look like because you already know that my background color is beige, and I am maintaining that throughout the presentation, so it has the same meaning. And when it has the same meaning, it builds that visual hierarchy. And let's say you're creating a PowerPoint slide and you are inputting it into Module 1. It is best to continue using the same colors and the same visuals for the rest of your course, because then the students know what to expect. They don't have to stop and consider and try to understand what are the different colors that you might be changing. No, they already know that the same colors have the same meaning, and they already know what to expect in the course, which makes it much easier for them to take it. Okay, so now, with all that said, with all the rules and the theory we discussed behind the colors, now let's talk about how we can implement this with AI. So, like I said, I'm going to be using Google Gemini for this demonstration, and I'm going to input this sample prompt. I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud for you. It says, create a high contrast color palette for college presentation slides, provide hex codes for background, text, and accent color, ensure the colors meet accessibility standards for easy reading, and list which combinations are safe to use for text. Perfect. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I am going to copy this prompt, and then I have Gemini open, and then I can add it here. So if you have a specific course in mind, I would definitely specify to Gemini. The more instructions you give AI, the better. So let's say we want to create a presentation for a college biology course, college biology presentation slides. Okay, and then as you can see, I said hex codes. What are the hex codes? Hex codes, as we saw here, are basically numbers and letters that determine where the color is on the RGB scale. So if I move it around, you will see that the numbers are changing. All it does is basically just specifies what the color is on the web. So just so you know what that means. Okay, so going back to the prompt. So let's hit enter and then see what kind of colors it gives us. All right, so it says it meets the AA standards, which is perfect. And then here are the hex codes that it gave us. Now, one thing about this is that we cannot tell what that color is, right? Like we get the hex code, but I personally don't remember what each one specifies. So what we can do instead is we can copy it. And if we go back to Adobe Color, we can actually use the color wheel. And then we can input the colors there for visual clarity. So I'll go ahead and paste the first one, all right? And then the second one for text, right? And then the third one for accent. And I'm just gonna keep it 3 for today. Okay, perfect. So here's the color palette that it created for us, which is great. Now, if you don't like the color and you want to change it, like let's say you didn't want this green to be like this, like you wanted it maybe brighter or you wanted like a different shade of it, you can go ahead and try to play with the sliders here, or you can also go ahead and try to move it here. Like let's say you wanted something like greenish blue, so you can drag it towards the blue and make it so. Okay, perfect. So like let's say you're satisfied with this color, you can then copy it and then you can give it back to Gemini and say, actually, I want my accent color 1 to be this new color, and then you can continue from there. Now, the issue with this is that this is a lot of information to remember. You have to have the prompt that I just shared with you, you have to have it saved somewhere, and then you have to input it every time and give it these parameters. Like if you remember, if I pull up the prompt one more time, like we're asking it to, text accent colors, we want it to be accessible, we want it to be easy to read, and asking it which combinations to use for text. To avoid all of that, and to avoid remembering or memorizing or keeping this prompt somewhere, what we can do instead is use a gem. So specifically for this presentation, I have made a gem called Color Me Surprised for generating color palettes, and excuse my sense of humor, that was the best I could do. So what that gem does, it creates the color palettes for you. You can ask it to create a color palette, or you can describe a vibe that you wanted. Like let's say you're making that biology course that we saw earlier, and you wanted it to be this foresty green or maybe something blue. You can actually input that you want forest green colors, or if you wanted like midnight ocean, something like that. Like you can use those types of descriptions to give it to this gem. So let's try it out. So now this gem, if anybody doesn't know what a gem does, is you basically input the instructions, you give it a role to fulfill, and it already has everything in mind. So you don't have to type add accessibility, like make sure that the background is good. So instead of typing it in the prompt, the gem already has all that information. So everything that we talked about in part 1 and 2, it already knows it has it in mind. So now we can go ahead and just ask it to create a color palette. So I'm going to tell it to create a color palette for a film studies course. Focusing on David Lynch's Dune, right? So if we're thinking Dune, we're thinking sci-fi, desert vibes, things like that. So we can hit OK, and then we can see what it gives us. Let's see. Oh, perfect. And the good thing about this gem, it already provides a little preview of what the color is for us, which is great, right? You don't have to go into Adobe Color or any other tool that you want to use and like try to figure out what the hex codes do. No, instead you already have them, you already know what they look like, and then if you don't like them, you don't have to leave Gemini to change them. You can just say, actually, like I want a different shade of blue, or I don't like the blue as my accent color, like make me another palette, right? Very cool. So then from here, what you can do is you can continue this conversation with Gemini. Let's say like you wanted to create a graphic about Dune or create a graphic about your specific course. You can go ahead and ask it here. So as an example, we can just ask it to do that. We can say create a graphic about Dune, right? And then it will go ahead and do so. Let's wait another moment. And then usually when it makes the graphics, it gives you text in it. And then I definitely advise with anything with text to actually go ahead and proofread it and make sure that everything is good, because AI does tend to hallucinate and make mistakes, especially when it comes to text graphics. It is improving at a crazy speed, but always make sure to check the text. And also, here it's giving me the newer version of Dune, even though I asked for the 1984 version of Dune, so that's another mistake that it's making. But as you can see, it is using the colors that it gave us, the orange, the black, and the blue. As you can see it in the little details. So it is maintaining the color palette that we have. Now, you can go ahead and actually, like let's say you don't like banana that Gemini uses, and you want to use another AI software. What you can do now is you can actually copy these colors, so your primary, your background, and accent, and you can go ahead and put it into any other tool. Like let's say you wanted to use Canva and you wanted to create graphics in there. Maybe that's the tool that you're used to. You can go ahead and take those hex codes, and then you can just input it in there. Or like let's say you have ChatGPT and you want to continue going with ChatGPT, totally fine. You can go ahead and use them there as well. So another use case that I wanted to show you that's very cool is Notebook LM. So here I asked ChatGPT to make a fake article about Dune, and then I added it to Notebook LM. And Notebook LM can take PDFs or any type of documents or like articles, and then go through them. And there's a lot of different things that you can do, but today we're going to focus on slide decks specifically. And it actually has this new tool that you can use. So what you can do now, like I was explaining, you can now say to create a slide deck with the following color palette. And then if you had any other specific instructions, like you wanted it to mention specific topics, or you wanted to pull something from the article that you're using, you can go ahead and tell it in there as well. But for now, I will just specify the colors that we want to use, and I will copy the ones that Color Me Surprise gave me. Okay, and then you can just paste it here. And then this is how you would go and generate your slide deck. You can choose the length and the language even, so you can go ahead and do that. For the sake of time, I'm not going to generate a presentation today. I will just show you an example of another one that I made a few days ago, just because this tool is new and it takes a little bit to create the slide decks. But for now, I'll show you an example that it made. Now, keep in mind, this is not using the same color palette that it created for us today. I think originally when I did the example, it used black, gold, and blue. So that is the color palette it's using for this presentation. But I will quickly show you what kind of things it's doing. And then once again, make sure that you are proofreading everything that it's giving you. But for now, we're just looking at like an example of what it can do. But as you can see here, it's using a lot of sci-fi elements, very cool graphics that it's creating. And because we are using that contrast and following the guidelines, the text is very hard to, the text is very easy to read. And the presentation also looks very cool as well. But I think here I can show you the prompt that I used, and I did just the same thing. Create a slide deck using the following color palette, the background, primary, and accent color. Cool. If you don't like some of the slides that it created, you can also click revise and then create a prompt and ask it to remove something, add something, etc., which is very cool. All right, so that is all to say that we're now getting to our key takeaway portion. So if you still have that asterisk from teaching AI to design in mind, this is exactly what we're talking about. We're teaching AI to design with intention. Oh, and we have a question. Go ahead.
You could show how to download the slide deck.
Yes, let me do that. Let's see. I believe it creates it as images. You can probably either download it from here as the PowerPoint, or then you can also download here as a PDF document. Or I think also here. So up to you where you want to download the slides, but that should be it. And I hope that answers your question. Awesome. All right. Going back. The key takeaways. Okay. As I was saying, the asterisk that we had in mind, we are teaching AI to design with intention by following established rules. AI does not know how to design themselves. It just follows whatever you tell it to do. So if we create those established rules and we input it into AI, we then are speeding up our process and letting creativity take charge. Like you saw with the gem, instead of like creating the prompt again, inputting all the instructions, it already knew, so the process was much faster. I just said, hey, I want a color palette for Dune. Can you make it? And it did. So because we're using AI for this, we can also create better visuals for better learning, because we're thinking of all the rules and all the theories that we discussed in this presentation. That is exactly how we can create those visuals. All right, to wrap this up, there's some helpful links for you to peruse after. There's Gemini. If you haven't tried it, go ahead. If you want to try the gem, you can click on this link and then play around with it, break it, let me know if you break it and I'll try to fix it. And then if you wanted to learn a little bit more about our playground event, you can go to fau.edu/AI/AI playground to read a little bit about it. Or you can also attend our other playground events. And speaking of that, we have another one coming up in 2 weeks with our wonderful Jessica, who is going to be talking about engineering agency, building rigorous student choice boards with AI. So this wraps up my presentation. Thank you so much for everybody for coming. However, that is not the end. Now we'll have playtime where everybody who's here will open our laptops and then we'll play with the tools that we discussed. And then everybody who's online, the Play AI assistants will assist you with discovering these tools as well. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming and I will see you next time.